Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Here we are in the cage talking to Engram. We've got John Costello and Martin Bowes.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about the album Das Kapital, which is due to be released October, is it?
Yeah.
Late October.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So just tell us a little bit about yourselves individually, because you both come from musical backgrounds of different calibers. So obviously, you, Martin, you do attrition.
Oh yeah, since the day John Lennon was shot, actually. December the 8th, 1980 was our first gig. I guess we had rehearsals, so it was a bit before then. But so I've done it. I've just with the various lineups, but always me, and I've just done kind of dark electronic music. I don't intend it to be dark. It just is. I've tried to do happy things and it doesn't work. I've just done that. It's like all my life, really. It seems like. And I've just come back from Transylvania, so it's a gig there. So I've done that, and very little else actually in terms of bands. You know, I didn't play in other bands because I couldn't play anything.
Yeah.
That's why electronics were good to me.
Yeah.
And so I've always had that background since like the early 80s, and doing lots of albums and touring. And in '96, just after the first US tour, actually, I started teaching music technology at the college here in Coventry, and that's where I met John. And what were you teaching?
BTEC and A-level media.
Media. It's not a proper subject.
He isn't anymore, that's for sure.
But the main thing was you were also doing a radio show, and we were talking about the same sort of bands, weren't we?
Yeah.
Obviously, when we were chatting, and a bit about your radio show.
Yeah. So the college had a restricted service radio licence, and so I did the Monday night graveyard shift for the month that they were broadcasting. So it was that kind of John Peel 10 till 12 slot, where I did an electronic music show called Robotnik, and then obviously perfect opportunity to get Martin in. So we talked about attrition, we talked about our shared love of electronic music, and he chose some stuff on the playlist. And I've still got that on cassette somewhere.
I know, it's got to be out there.
We'll have to digitise it for posterity's sake. So we got to talking more about maybe doing a collaboration, because I'd done solo individual electronic cassettes in the 80s, and we then managed all of a day and a half, I think, in the cage, as it was then, in its first incarnation, where we recorded and kind of mixed What Am I, which was centred around a bunch of Videodrome samples that I got off cassette, I think. And we wanted to do something with it, but we didn't quite know what. First of all, we wanted to finish it, but Martin had met this guy on his US tour in North Carolina called Brian Mitchell, who was setting up a label called Silver, and he wanted to do a compilation album as his first release. So Martin suggested this track to him, and he loved it so much that he didn't even want us to finish it. He just wanted to release it as we had it at that stage. So that became part of Silver Records' first ever compilation album, which was called Alleviation, which was released at the back end of '96.
In the time when CD compilations would sell.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then life got in the way, and I came out of a kind of very long major relationship and hit an extraordinarily good midlife crisis, and Martin went the other way and had children.
It was not just that, it was because I had to teach at the college.
Yeah.
I never really wanted to do a proper job, but it wasn't a bad one, really. But yeah, there was that. And also, I was very busy with attrition, actually.
Yeah.
We were touring in America and Europe every year, the late 90s. And I did quite a lot of albums. So it was just a lot to do, and so I didn't have time. And we just, we'd occasionally see each other, wouldn't we? But
Yeah.
I remember we went to see Sparks
Yes.
in about 96, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
great.
it was great,
really, yeah, excellent. So we would, but it sort of drifted off a bit, and it was only when, in like, the music courses were finishing, I think most creative courses were just finishing at the college.
The A-level programme combusted.
The whole system was just falling apart. So I left, and then I left in 2011, and then you were like hung on a little bit longer.
2 years after. Yeah,
it was asked to leave actually.
Yeah, it's great. Well, it was great because I was going to leave at one point before that, and they, it's like the mafia. Just when I thought I was out, and they dragged me back in. Yeah. But so I would have left and gone away with nothing, and just to get out of there. But of course, unfortunately, when you're teaching 2-year A-level courses, that means that you have to dump on 1 year of students that you've taken through who expect you to finish with them. So they appealed to my better nature, and then I discovered that I had one. So so I stayed on for another year, at which point I was made redundant. So bingo.
Wow.
Yeah.
But that well then.
Yeah, it worked out very well.
I don't know how it happened again even, but we just were chatting and said, I know you were saying about, let's do some sort of DJ night at one point, weren't you?
Yeah.
Like, oh, come on, we're getting old.
Put a club
let's
night
do it before we
Coventry.
die,
Yeah, and then neither of us could be asked.
No.
So you rekindled back at the reproduction gig, is that right?
No,
yeah, that's right.
Well, Trish played that, so we'd already bit before,
Yeah, okay, right.
Because it was probably 2012.
Yeah, so I think the idea was that I wanted to put on an electronic music show that showcased not just one brand of electronica, but kind of across a whole spectrum.
It's a good lineup, that.
Yeah, so we had an instrumental synthesis called Chris Gilbert from London doing his Mild Peril stuff, which was great. It was all Ableton stuff, and he did it really, really well. And then myself, and then Cult with No Name, my friend Eric Stein's band, and then Naked Lunch, who I'd seen reformed play a gig the year before, and they were beset by awful problems. But then they pulled out a storming set and Reproduction 13, and then Attrition headlined. And then after that, we kind of realised that there was an unfinished business out there, and Martin said, "Hey, we've got an album to finish." And so we went back at it, and 5 years down the line, here we are. We've finished it incredibly.
Finally done.
Yeah.
Well, so when you first started back in '96, did you have the idea of doing a full album, and did you have an idea of?
I don't think we were just testing the water, really. Just
I'd not worked with anyone else after my first band. Basically, didn't work because I was a control freak, and so that's why I did all the 80s instrumental stuff myself, and released the 2 cassettes in the 80s. Which, when you take that round full circle, nobody gave a shit about at the time, but not in this country anyway. People in Barcelona and Germany and other places kind of liked it, and it was distributed in an edition. The first one was an edition of 50, and the second one was an edition of 100. But then there was no kind of real progression for something like that, and I just didn't do it anymore. So when me and Martin got together, I don't think he'd worked with anyone compositionally for a long time, and I certainly hadn't. So we didn't really know whether it was going to work or not, and that's why we just tested the water. But it seemed to work then, and of course the results were actually released on the Silver Records compilation album.
Yeah.
So it was just that, for various complicated reasons, we didn't actually manage to get back at it again for another 17 years.
And then you thought, let's just make an album.
Yeah.
You didn't think, let's make a couple of songs?
No, it seemed silly to just go, let's have a go at another song.
Yeah. So let's do an album,
Yeah, I think the first idea was to do an EP, and then we just kept on building the basis of several tracks, and once we had 10 tracks, we realised, hey, there's an album's worth, so we might just well keep going and finish this. We didn't realise it was going to take 5 years, but that was the idea even then.
Yeah, great. Brilliant.
But we're really glad you like it.
Okay, so I mean, having listened to the album a lot over the last couple of weeks, it probably is the darkest thing that I've heard in quite a long time. which is really refreshing, really, because it's just so. It's not an easy listen, but I like that about it. That's something that I credit it for. It's interesting. It's kind of ballsy. It takes a lot of risks. You know, you can tell that it's just something that you want to do for yourselves more than anyone else, from the sounds of things. But just how does that sort of work between the two of you? Sort of, you both have very different ideas about music, or do you have very similar ideas about music? I mean, how does that work?
It's not that different, is it? I mean, first of all, I don't find it that dark, but I never do with anything I do. This seems like lighter than things I do normally. But I think, obviously, we've got our different influences. Unfortunately, John likes prog rock. But it's not. But a lot of them are in common, I think, aren't they?
Yeah, well, we start out with a shared love of electronics.
Mm.
And that's kind of where we take it through. And then, Martin goes towards the punk side of things a lot more than I do. And I go towards the sort of jazz, prog, improv side of things a lot more than he does.
Mm.
So it's, I think we said that it was kind of a meeting of minds that approached the same middle from very different ends, I think.
Mm.
So we worked together in the studio surprisingly well and surprisingly quickly, given that, we are trying to come to do the same thing, but from very different sides, and so it always seemed quite easy, really.
Mm.
Yeah, because we'd have a different opinion on something, but it's only like a little bit, or they might be like that, and then they'll come in, and gradually, well, try that, or I don't know, I'm not sure, or go on.
Mm.
And then it works, and so I mean, you're always going to get some sort of compromise in any band. But then that's what makes it special sometimes.
That's what makes it work, It's the nature of collaboration.
Yeah.
So is there any sort of conflicts or anything like that,
I think that'll be on the second album.
Yeah. Yeah, that difficult second album, which will probably by current
musical
about
differences.
2040.
John will want to start playing a flute and things.
I don't think that. I can't imagine that.
Trying to get a real drummer in here.
No, I mean, we do have kind of shared sensibilities, but we do have quite a lot of differences as well. And yet, the recording has always been a case of just trying different things, and there'll be enough, if I'm kind of sitting there thinking I'm not too into that, and then there'll be something that happens that I'll just think, okay, let's try this, and we can take it in that direction. And then if Martin's thinking something similar, he can always add something into the mix that's going to do something that's going to make it better for him. And we seemed to have done so far, touching wood, we seem to have done that pretty easily.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, normally I work for attrition, it's me, so with other guests, whatever, and they'll put an input in, but it's generally I'm like
you have the final say on everything.
Yeah, dictator. But with this, it's more of a communist collective. So it's like, so it's interesting, to like go, well, all right, well, I think it should have had more reverb, whatever, just sort of to go, and then sometimes you go, well, actually, that works, but I wouldn't have really gone for that. So sometimes that changes what you would normally have done, challenges it. But it hasn't been like crazy, but it's I think that's quite good.
I think one of the first decisions that we made, without even kind of talking too much about it, was that we wanted to have most of the vocals that were being used as found audio. So samples taken from whatever it might be. So we used Videodrome on What Am I? So that seemed to set a template. And then when we came back to it, we were using the first two things, I think, that we were starting to mix in were the found speech of John F. Kennedy to the American Press Corps that basically we cut to meaning the exact opposite of what he was saying. And that became the basis of Karl Marx. And then the Jim Jones tape from the Drinking the Kool-Aid on The Good Life, which I found on the internet and was surprisingly good quality considering it was recorded in the compound on a cassette, and it was the final hours of what was happening there. And so I trawled through a lot of that and picked out the choicest bits, and then we worked with that. And it's kind of interesting because people think that that's quite a dark track, but that's probably mainly to do with the content of the vocal.
Musically it's quite upbeat, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Compared to the rest of the album.
And also
it's the next single, basically.
Even the titles is it's tongue in cheek. Same with on the Divine Plan.
Yeah.
It is acceptable to commit suicide.
Yeah, before the 1984 sample, those were the first words you heard on the album.
Yeah.
Which we liked the idea of, but I kind of did like the idea of putting the 1984 stuff in there as well, just to give it that grounding in. Because when we were talking about how people were going to receive it, and we obviously thought that Das Kapital as a title might provoke some people, particularly on the other side of the pond, into not liking it or having an ideological opposition to it. But we did it with the usual irony, tongue-in-cheek, whatever, and B, we kind of tried to make the album as much about totalitarianism as possible. And so, some of the themes that wind their way through the album, we just kind of figured that the idea of Das Kapital and because we'd already done the Karl Marx single, was kind of just another way of putting out mixed messages and winding people up, really.
So I mean, progressively the album as well, it has its own flow. So it starts off with it's got kind of its sort of EBM, almost sort of industrial sort of stuff going on, and then it kind of descends into total soundtrack, synth, barely any drums really throughout, and it starts to kind of really descend. Is there a theme in terms of concept that sort of flows through that as well?
I think we just did the pieces separately, but then it began to come together. When I do an album, I always think of an album, so I do it I use Wavelab to put all the songs. So even in the early days with the demos, you can start putting them in an order and seeing how they work, and then that can go and influence the actual track itself. You might go we've got loads of drums there. Let's do a piece where it falls back a bit and it's more ambient. That would be track 5, whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's it's sort of organic, really. It wasn't. We didn't sit there and this is what it'll be like, and then we have to write the pieces.
It's just as you go.
Yeah.
And then the sounds that you discover. I mean, High Tech Now was all about discovering the Japanese choir. Yeah. It's like, wow, that sounds fantastic. Japanese children's choir, I think we can use that. And so that became one of the kind of milder tracks on the album, because it was just
school choir.
Yeah, the Fukushima school choir, just to see where we could go with that. But I don't think we really ever had a concept. I mean, one of the things that stitched the album together in our minds was the amount of times that we were using number stations on tracks. And then we kind of realised that A, a lot of other people had been doing that, and B, we wanted to try and scale it back somewhat. So there used to be a lot more numbers on it than there is now. But even so, we liked number stations so much that we wanted to include them. And so even on something like The Good Life, the really weird staccato vocal effect on The Good Life is a number station just chopped up and gated, and it sounds great, but you'd never tell that's where it came from originally.
What's the Razor Inside about?
Oh man, what's the Razor Inside about? That's a really good question. Got no idea. The Razor Inside was we had the music for that particular track, but we didn't have any obvious found vocal that could go with it. And I suggested in my stupidity that we could potentially use some of my old modular poetry that I used to write when I was about 18 to 21 or something. And it was all completely derivative of people like William Burroughs and the Surrealists. And effectively it was just cut and paste. It was like taking lots of words or fragments of sentences from different sources and then putting them next to each other, juxtaposing them, seeing how they worked and whether they worked. And so the full title of The Razor Inside is 4WB because it's for William Burroughs. And that is something that I never thought would ever see the light of day. And here we are, 40 odd years after I wrote it. And it's now on the album.
Yeah, immortalised.
Yeah.
What's next in terms of what you want to do with it? Where do you want to take this album? Are you going to do some gigs? Where are you going to distribute it? What's the plan?
Actually, one of the things I wanted to say is what I like about Engram is, as opposed to Attrition, which I've done for like 37 years or whatever, is that there are no expectations with it, so we can do whatever we want, and in a way we don't care. We can just, it's not, whereas with having a long history with Attrition, I've got things I've done, but with this, I like the fact that we can do what we want. So we still like making it up as we go along as well, aren't we? But the plan is we've done the album, so we're going to release. Obviously, we're releasing it. It's ridiculous if we didn't. But,
just don't release.
Why would we have done this?
Philosophical concept.
Yeah,
Spend 20 years doing an album, don't release
We're
it.
just going to do the interview and that's it. But we're doing that, and then whatever formats, and so we want to do it live as well. And that's, as we get the album ready, it's all virtually ready to go off to be pressed, and so that's the next thing, isn't it, really, looking at live rehearsing and...
So I'm away for a while, and then coming back in October, that's when we're going to release we're going to do it ourselves on CD and download, so it's going to go out on Bandcamp as download, and then there's going to be a limited edition 100 CD run.
Might be a short cassette run.
There might be a short cassette run also, seeing as now people seem to have got cassettes back in their heads for some unknown
Vinyl
reason.
release?
Well,
I'd buy it.
we'll see, but I don't think we'll do that ourselves. But we have sent a few tracks out to some labels, so but these things can take a bit of time sometimes.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be all the tracks because it's nearly an hour. So
That's
but that would be nice, yeah.
Plus, as you say, it's difficult music, so it's not the sort of thing that's going to grab.
Yeah.
Unless they're particularly clued into its vibe, they're not going to grab them on first listen. They're going to have to kind of grow into it and build it.
Absolutely.
And that takes us back to, I think, one of the things that we wanted to create when we were starting to record. When we came back in 2013 and said, right, there's going to be an album at the end of this. Whenever it's going to be, there's going to be an album. We wanted to record the kind of music that we feel is not out there anywhere near enough these days. That kind of, dare I use the word intelligent, slow burn, carefully crafted electronica that you've tried to put a bit more, soul is the wrong word, but, a bit more into than just the normal synth pop elements or the EBM elements or the industrial elements or the soundtrack elements. We've tried to collage all of those things, but we've also tried to grow them when we've hit them too. And so we have no idea how the album will play, but we think that there are going to be a minority of people out there who, when they hear it, will really, really like it.
Well, we did Karl Marx, was it 2 years ago?
3. 2015.
It was a single, but download. But it's also appeared on 2 or 3 CD compilations and been played all over the place. And it's actually done quite well, It's, it's a good start. So I think it'll go down quite well, really, the album. But so same with any music that I do it anyway.
If it works, it works. If it doesn't,
but you just do it enough until people give in and just like you. But we want to do some live stuff, and obviously we've got a little bit of a hook in with Attrition that if John comes, it's only one extra person, so that might mean that we can. It will mean that we can go and play in different countries. So that's not rocket science. So there's that, and then I mean, for recordings, I don't know. It's a bit early after. It's a bit of a shock that we finished it. Really. It's almost.
That was
I think we were like putting it off. A bit
Yeah.
like watching a good series. You don't want to give it, get to the end.
Yeah.
To be fair to ourselves as well, I think that there were plenty of times in the last 5 years with each one of the tracks that's on the album where we kind of looked at each other and said, that's more or less finished now. That's great. That's there.
Mm.
And then maybe it was only a quarter of the way done compared to the amount of work we finally ended up putting into it,
Yeah.
So we have actually put a lot of more effort than, because we probably could have released an album 3 years ago that we were happy with, but now we're super happy with this.
If we'd been paying, 20 quid an hour, we'd have finished it years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is the beauty of both of us more or less having our time to ourselves. So
freedom.
we could come and I could come into the cage and we could just set up, start up, and then we'd know pretty much off the bat that we'd got some. We always knew that it was going in the right direction. We were always very confident in the quality of it, and then it was just how quickly we could get it to work. And 5 years sounds like not quickly at all, really. Even Kraftwerk could probably have done an album in that period, but we did take a great deal of time and care and polish over it. So because we were allowed to, as Martin said, if there'd been kind of pounds per hour riding on this, then it would have been quite a lot different and quite a lot sparser, I think.
Also, it wasn't our main project, so it
No.
was like, obviously it takes longer. That's been 2 years to write the album and do it if we'd have done it as the main thing. But yeah, that's good. So, I mean, I don't know if I quite like the idea of doing an EP with perhaps do another track and some different mixes, or just do some follow up.
Yeah.
Perhaps when we're gigging,
Yeah.
But there's
Companion
nothing
piece to go with it.
nothing set in stone.
Well, for a long time I've had this, I don't quite know why, but I've had this hankering to do an Engram cover of White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane.
We kind of started it 5
We
years
started
ago.
it, yeah, but we didn't get very far. So I think that's something that
I'd
we
like
could
to do
revisit.
it.
Yeah.
It's because the timing of the original is, for some reason, they didn't use a computer. And I'm surprised it was released. And it was like, so the timing it's really,
Drifts.
if you analyse it,
It drifts.
it's really bad. Not that that's bad, it's like
just
speeds up.
natural,
And,
isn't it?
yeah, but then that caused problems.
Yeah, when you're trying to rip it off.
Yeah, so then, does that take us down the road of doing a small covers EP and thinking of other stuff that we really like and want to put into that? There's plenty of grounds for planning, but at the moment, as I say, it's, as Martin said, it's just the shock of having actually finished it after all these years.
Just rest on your laurels for a bit,
Yeah, it's just kind of, go back and drink some coffee and think, wow, we actually did that. So the live things are going to happen in due course.
And spending time promoting it. I mean,
Yeah.
it takes a lot because it feels
Get
doing
some
it.
merchandise for the live gigs, and it's not going to be something that's going, again, as Martin said, it's still not our main project, so it's something that can fit now nice and easily around both of the projects that we're doing, so it'll work.
Yeah.
Well, when we did What Am I, and then when we started doing stuff like Karl Marx and The Good Life, we realised that it wasn't going to be, it was going to be difficult in inverted commas music. It wasn't going to be that kind of immediate, because it was pulling so many different influences together. So obviously it's nearest damn it all electronic, but you've got soundtrack tonalities, you've got kind of ambient, you've got industrial, you've got some what you might call techno, some what you might call EBM, some what you might call synth art pop, and it all kind of just went into the same melting pot, really.
Yeah.
I was going to do a vocal actually, and I never got around to it. So
I was expecting one, to be honest.
I was expecting one, but that gives a reason to do another follow-up, doesn't it?
There you go.
It does.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just weird the way that worked, because it was, most of the vocals were found vocals.
Well, yeah, I liked that it was all spoken word, even the actual recorded.
Yeah. I think
lyrics
that was a very conscious decision, that if we were going to do, Exquisite Corpse, which is the old surrealist word game, and then we were also going to do the Razor Inside, which I dragged out, my old poem from the late 70s, I guess, early 80s. We didn't want it to do it as a sort of pop song. We didn't want it to do it as a sung vocal, so it was only going to work as a spoken vocal.
I think we realised that early on, that we didn't want to do, because we got some bits with a beat, and we thought you could, like, there was I can't remember which track it was. It's got like a bit of a 90s EBM sort of thing. It's a couple, I suppose.
Early on, the first few.
They got that kind of thing, and it could have gone for that kind of track, a bit shouting. Through a megaphone or whatever, but we just didn't really want to do it, and I think, and also with the vocals, I'm doing plenty on with attrition. I'm recording that album's taken years as well, but not quite as long. But that new one's nearly done, so I'm doing a lot of the moments. I didn't feel the need. I think that's another thing.
There's it mentioned on the credits. It mentions a guest vocalist as well. I honestly thought it was a sample. I didn't realise it was actually a guest.
Well,
vocalist.
It almost is the way it's been manipulated. But it was it's Christina. She's American. Yeah, we should talk about her. She's American, but she lives in Holland now.
Okay.
With her boyfriend Eric, and I've got these things go on too long because I don't remember how anything started.
I think we asked her if she'd got, because we knew she was a vocalist, and we asked her if she'd got anything, and it was some medieval German hymn, wasn't it?
It is, that's what it is.
I thought it was German.
I don't know why that's good.
So she sent it through, and then we listened to it, and we liked it, and we thought we had a good track in mind for it, and then we realised that we'd have to change the key of the track if we wanted to put her vocal on that track. And then we realised that we didn't want to change the key of the track, so what we actually did was we changed the key of her vocal. And that took a lot of manipulation. But it was worth it. It was worth it. So when she actually hears it, she'll probably...
Oh, she has heard it.
Has she? Good.
She's got,
that's good. Because and she hasn't killed us yet, so that's all good. So we had to do quite a lot of changing of pitch and key on her vocal, but I think it just works so well with the track now. And that's the same track with the kind of synth guitar overload as well, which is
that's probably my favourite track. That's the one that ends up going into what sounds like a real drum kit, but it's just kind of a bit otherworldly though. Doesn't quite seem. I like it. It's sort of that's the most krautrock that the whole thing goes.
That's true. Krautrock's all right. Prog isn't.
Well, it's a
derivative of it.
To be fair, it's probably kraut prog.
I don't mind.
But it's and we should also mention. We should also mention the artist, the album artist.
Yes,
there's a guy called Rainer Ganal who's an internationally known socialist artist who it's kind of interesting because I saw the image on the net and I just really liked it, and I just feel like the only one that I found was a kind of shitty quality one that to stood up for an album cover, and of course then you have to get the rights. And I just contacted him. I contacted him through his website, and he got back to me in his very strange English, and he was quite keen actually. So he said, just use it, and he asked me what I wanted to use it for, and he's probably forgotten all about it now because this was at least 3 years ago. And I said it was going to be on the cover of an album, that we were a small band, that we weren't going to do it as a big major release. It was going to be a limited edition of 100 CDs. So he said, use it and just give me a credit and sling me a copy of the album. And so that was good. And so when I wanted to know where to send it, he said Fifth Avenue in New York. So he's obviously doing all right.
The heart of socialism.
He's obviously doing pretty well. And I'm sure, as I say, he's forgotten all about it. So when he actually gets the CD through, he'll probably go, "What bloody hell's this?" Fortunately, I still have the emails. So from when he said, "Yes, by all means use it. So
I think we're doing T-shirts with it on, aren't we?
yeah, we said, and I did say that the idea was then to, because it was such a striking image, to use it as a T-shirt as well.
Completely red, or just with the red? With
red on black, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he said, yeah, just sling me a T-shirt as well. So, and then we had some great photographs taken for the cover by Anthony Weir.
Yes.
Of course,
in the old Coventry Evening Telegraph building, which you knew very well. You played there, didn't you?
I did, yeah, we did. That's right.
Great, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It wasn't in the, it wasn't downstairs in the press room, in the printing room. Though it was in the office, which was again quite interesting.
Yeah.
In itself, it almost seems like they never redecorated since when it was built.
Probably not.
But yeah. But yeah, so I mean, there's some quite interesting photographs down there. Very industrial looking panels.
Yes.
Which look quite nice and science fiction-y.
Well, Martin told me about it, and
we did a job lot, didn't we? It was attrition, and then we changed a few things
it.
around, and then we did Engram. Although I went twice, I went with another photographer, Andre. So.
But I didn't know the place. You know, that I didn't know it was open to the public, and so and then by the time we came to trying to do the Engram shoot, it was literally a week before it was due to close. So we had to actually get on it straight away, which was good because Martin contacted Anthony, and Anthony said yes, and he did a really good job. So
yeah, he's really
he deserves a lot of thanks for that too, because I know he's done photographs for you guys as well.
That's right. Yeah, again, he's done 2 of my things. He did the Super Hooch one and the autograph one as well.
Cool.
So.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, now it's just a question of seeing what happens when we put the CDs out and the Bandcamp downloads, and seeing who actually cottons onto it and where it goes from there. The great thing is with these things, as you know, is once you give birth to something and then you let it out into the world, you've got no control over it from that point onwards. So it does find its own level.
See what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.